Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you are doing well. If we were in person, I would ask you to raise your hand if you loved watching thrillers and spy movies growing up. Speaking for myself, I loved watching these growing up. And if you're a 90s kid, do you remember Inspector Gadget or Spy Kids 1, 2, or 3? I do. Or what about Enemy of the State with Will Smith? That was a great movie. These movies gave us thrill and the allure of what it looked like to catch the bad guys. The triumph of defeating evil, all with the help of new technologies like electroshock gumballs and crime-fighting cyborg armies. Nowadays, we even have shows like Black Mirror, which introduces us to what the world could be like if we adapt new technologies. But sometimes these technologies feel eerily familiar. They show us mind-controlled soldiers, social rating systems, biological implants that let people see or let people track everything that they see and hear, their emotional states and their health. I want you to look down at your pockets or at your hands. If you're joining us virtually, feel around your desk or your purse. Undoubtedly, you will have a computer or a phone next to you. Maybe it's an Apple Watch, or maybe it's an Alexa or a Ring camera. These pieces of technology listen to you speak. They track your gaze, and they even know your search history. What if I told you that there is a history of surveillance far beyond these modern technological advances that were used to track, monitor, and surveil Black families and Indigenous families? What if I told you that catching the bad guys isn't what we think it is, and it's not what's been portrayed to us in these movies? Surveillance tactics in the past and in the present have relied on new technological and data collection processes that have been included in some of the most treacherous laws, like the lantern laws of the 18th century, where Black individuals were required to walk around with lanterns so that white individuals could track them more easily. It included runaway slave ads in newspapers and slave schedules, which tracked Black mobilities in a violent way. This image on your screen is where the trail of my family's history ends and begins in the eyes of our society. Many of you might think that these forms of surveillance went away after the abolition of slavery, but they didn't. Anti-Black surveillance progressed in an insidious way, made invisible to many of us through the normalization of data collection and the reliance on tech innovation for efficiency and accuracy. Now people want to not only control Black families, they want to prevent them from causing harm, something that society wants you to believe that is inevitable for all Black individuals. These modes of anti-Black surveillance and criminalization seep into the most seemingly benevolent and well-to-do systems. Biased algorithms that mistakenly flag Black individuals as high risk for welfare fraud, and medical systems that use algorithms to identify patients for medical care that miss critically ill Black patients. For mothers that I work with in the child welfare system, this looks like biased risk assessment tools that are used to determine which children get to stay with families and which don't. All of these systems and their technological tools are based on ideas about who is a threat and why. These systems are grounded on the belief that poverty is an individual problem, directing blame onto people for problems that are actually a result of systemic racism and the organized abandonment of individuals by our government. As a result, anti-Black surveillance becomes a way to track and catch the bad guys. It's a form of punishment for being poor and Black in this country, and it's being used as a way to control Black familial bonds generationally, changing the fabric of our communities. Surveillance, meant to catch the bad guys, has been used in recent years as a way to punish Black families and remove Black children from their homes at disproportionate rates. It has changed the way that we think about who is a threat. I currently work with mothers in Los Angeles who have not only experienced houselessness, but who have had their children taken away by the child welfare system. These mothers have recounted to me the traumatic experiences of being involved in a system that only offers help with additional surveillance and punishment. One mother shares with me, "The way the system tracks my family haunts me for the rest of my life." Another shares, "It's been 7 years since I've seen my baby's face. It's hard to talk to her because they're always listening. They're listening to every single conversation and they watch everything that we do. We don't need biological implants as seen in shows like Black Mirror. This level of surveillance is already happening to Black mothers in the system that claims it is here for protection. Mothers talk about how it feels to lose all autonomy, to have data collected on them for generations, impacting their children's lives and their grandchildren's lives in an endless cycle of terror. Their fates are often judged or determined by risk assessment tools, being assigned a level of risk or a risk number based on their ability to afford housing or clean clothes, or being a foster youth themselves. They explain that they are reduced to a number, a score, something that erases their past, their current lives, and their future. They describe it as losing power to be a part of this society. Black mothers talk about being surveilled through random caseworker home visits, mandatory reporting laws, and information shared without their consent with police. Mothers are not read their rights. They're not given choice of what information can be shared because the system has tricked us into believing that surveillance is needed to protect children, to protect them from the bad guys. And in this context, that is often Black parents. Our society and our systems are being proliferated with artificial intelligence tools that aim to predict the risk of even babies being harmed before they're even born. The system is so caught up in tracking and surveilling and punishing that it lacks the ability to address the roots of conflict and harm. It lacks the insight and the intention to be a system of care. So I want to ask you today, what will we continue to allow as a society? We live in a reality where movies like The Enemy of the State and shows like Black Mirror, no matter how cool they are less of a far out dystopian or comedic piece of entertainment, but an actual reality. What we have to do is question what it looks like to rationalize surveillance and surveillance technologies. We must question who we are protecting. Who are we considering harmful? Black families want and deserve the right to create and sustain familial bonds and community power without surveillance and without state violence. We must question our role in perpetuating and continuing forms of surveillance that date back to slavery. We have to dispel the notion that tech-powered decision-making and the collection of massive amounts of data will reduce bias, thinking beyond bad data in equals bad data out. Our decisions are influenced by how we rationalize these tools, how we rationalize who and what deserves to be monitored and tracked. So I want to encourage us collectively to think about a response to harm that doesn't require state violence or a cycle of terror. These responses are on the screen, but they include reparations, basic family income, long-term support, community accountability processes, and free childcare. There are so many. I leave with you these sentiments from mothers who see that there is a way to move forward and away from norms that have damaged our Black communities and our ability as Black individuals to thrive and grow together. Instead of pushing mothers into a system that labels them as high risk, or as one mother calls it, a red flag, we can help build up our communities. Black mothers want their children. They want a home to live out their lives in peace and a chair to sit on after a long day. They want a foundation to grow. And it takes all of us to dream up a world in which they don't rely on new surveillance technologies to help each other through hard times. It takes all of our ideas. One mother I talked to says, it's not as much work if people talk about it and put it on the table. You put it on the board and you figure it out. So let's figure this out. Let's dream of a world without anti-Black surveillance together. Thank you.